if you guys, well, we're live, and I'm sorry we forgot our jingle to come
We
on
could
in.
get you a little jingle.
Dun, 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 and dun.
Did
Hi,
anyone tell you you could sing?
I just found out a couple of weeks ago. Thank you all.
I do worry about you now. You know that, right?
Gosh. Thank you all for tuning in Facebook Live. This is Eric Saunders, the Green-Eyed Bandit, and I am joined by yours truly, newly inducted Hall of Famer, one and only Miss Tamika Catchings. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me with you, Eric. Every time I get the pleasure to sit alongside of you, I mean, the Green-Eyed Bandit, everything you got, like I was looking at your artwork behind you, and I don't know, you continue to amaze me in everything that you do.
You continue to amaze, because I tell you, I was at an open house at George's over on the north side, and we had this little private room right there, and I looked up and I said, here goes Tamika, here goes Tamika. I'm about to tell everybody to be quiet at somebody else's open house. I'm like, listen, turn it up. Where's the remote? So,
and they probably were like, Eric, it's not that serious. Calm down.
It is to me. It is. We've been able to
just so everybody knows, Eric is kind of a big deal. So don't let him fool you. He is definitely a big deal here in Indianapolis. Soon to be like global. The Green-Eyed Bandit will be global. I know you guys see the GEB. That's what it stands for, just for somebody that maybe came a little bit later. Green-Eyed Bandit, GEB, 360 is, 360 because you're going 360 degrees, or like, what is it?
Oh, 360, yes. You know, you definitely want to make a change, but that's just me kind to, as you know, like I said, I'm a wordsmith. I love poetry, and I used to I'll pull up on anybody and say, hey, read me a poem, give me a freestyle. I would go to my father's house, and me and him, we would just go back and forth. And so, and then I would record him. And in my last show, he said, we're of the same mind. So GEB, that's me. The 360 is him, because he was born on the 360th day of the year, which is December 26th. So God rest his soul, love him to death. I will continue to carry his energy and his with me. So, hey, this is what you got. So
I love it. Well, hey, we got a show to do today.
We got a show. But
we can keep the conversation amongst us, but I see everybody else looking at us, and so I know they're probably, the people that are watching are probably wondering, okay, like, are they just gonna keep talking to each other?
Yes. Or... No. But this is our first show back. So last month, Tamika, she was gone, and then the month before that, I got hit with a surprise birthday party, so like a parade, and I was just like, oh, okay, so this is our first show together in about 2-3 months. So
in 2021.
Yep. So, yeah.
So let's get to some introductions. I mean, first off, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about vaccinations, COVID vaccinations. And we're going to go ahead and mix it up as we talk about race. And I think it's some deep-rooted issues as it pertains to this conversation. And there's some transparency that this needs to be discussed, because I think even in the midst of COVID, I just felt like it was so, when it first started, it felt like, okay, we all got to get on the same page. It's COVID against us. But then when you begin to realize people are losing their jobs, okay, who's losing their jobs? When you begin to see that people are already suffering from pre-existing conditions that really kind of maybe, and Dr. Kane might be able to back this up later, that really kind of help, have a weaker immunity, it's hard to fight it off. And then, so who are the folks that are suffering the most that were not really prepped to fight? And then on top of that, what has vaccinations been to certain races in the past? And, again, there's a trust factor. And so here we are, people are starting to get vaccinated. I'm just gonna go ahead and say, I'm vaccinated. Was I a little reluctant? Yes. But at the same time, you have folks like Dr. Kane who have been advocating. And not only that, it's important that you have people like that who's actually built a genuine trust,
Mm-hmm.
rapport in the community. We're not just gonna listen to anybody. And I know Dr. Kane is about that real. Y'all should have seen her getting her hair together and her jacket together. So, you know, she
I don't want to scare anybody.
right. She's not new to this. She's true to this. And so we're joined by an awesome panel today. Then we're going to just dive into this conversation. I really like to see how far we go down this rabbit hole, and looking forward to the information that we have coming out tonight.
So let's kick it off then, and let's get to the introduction. So Dr. Kane, since you are off mute in the moment, we'll hit you, then we'll hit Kristen, and then we got Kyrie Irving. No, I'm just kidding. We got Kyrie and Lauren. We'll kick it off to you guys last. So just some information, some general information. We want to know who you are. You don't have to give us your whole life story, but, you know, welcome to the panel.
All right. So, hi, I'm director of the local health department here in Indianapolis. I'm also a professor, social professor at the Indiana University School of Medicine, and I'm a bug doctor, and otherwise an infectious disease specialist. Okay. And I do chair the National Medical Association. That's the oldest and largest Black physician group in the country. I chair our infectious disease section, and I'm on our COVID-19 task force.
Awesome. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Kane. All right, Kristen.
All right, I'm unmuted. So I'm Kristen Golden. I am a nurse practitioner working in Anderson. I've been a nurse for over 10 years, which does seem crazy to say. Again, just kind of shows my age, apologies, but I have worked in Anderson, like I said, for the last 10 years, currently in family practice. And I have a family of my own, 3 little ones and a husband who are just my world. And so, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely.
All right, Kyrie and Lauren.
Hi, I'm Kyrie Abdullah, and this is Lauren Abdullah.
Hello.
I'm a teacher at Lawrence Central High School.
And I'm in sales here in Indianapolis.
And this is our daughter. She's going to be joining us quietly, hopefully. This is Zara. We battled COVID aggressively last March, so have a lot to share and can't wait to have a good conversation with everybody today.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. And I guess, Eric, do we want to just run right into it? We can start off with the questions.
We do. I'm going to, first, I'm a little partial. Let me make sure I have my tea.
What tea are you drinking?
Oh, this is just a stress relief tea. Honey lavender. So
I like it.
So get your tea at Tease Me. In the meantime, in between time, 2 locations. But then we also want to make sure that we give a shout out to AARP, who's been supporting out and sponsoring and working with us these last couple of months. So we definitely thank our friends and partners over at AARP. All right. So if you guys are ready, we just, like I said, let's just dive into it. Okay. Like I feel like I'm teaching again. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll just, again, I think everybody has had their own experiences of it, dealing with COVID and losing people and the anxieties and things like that. But let's just go ahead and kick it off, guys. What are your thoughts on the COVID vaccinations? And give your opinion, inform the people listening. Let's start there. And we'll start with...
who wants to kick it off?
Let's kick it off.
What are your thoughts on COVID vaccination?
Oh, man.
I'll start off. As a person that had a very, very lengthy battle with COVID, I think it's very important because I don't ever want to get it again. So for me, it was just like, at a certain point, my doctors pointed me in that direction because it was probably best that I had that vaccination, and I was all for it. And I'm not usually a vaccination person. I don't get a flu shot every year. I don't. I try to avoid the tetanus shot every time they try to give it to me at my doctor's appointments because it hurts. But I was definitely like, hey, if it'll keep me out of the hospital again, I will take my vaccination wherever you will give it to me. So.
Now, did you have COVID? Did both you and your wife had COVID?
I had it and went to the hospital. She had it while I had it, but she was home. So she didn't have it as aggressively.
So who gave it to who?
I gave it to her while she was pregnant.
Yeah.
Kyrie.
We're gonna get into that story. It's gonna be fun.
But in my opinion on the vaccination is just from that experience, I was proud that we had, or happy that we had a resource. Just from dealing with COVID early on, there weren't a ton of resources in March. There just wasn't a lot of knowledge right when everything happened. So when vaccine comes, I felt like there was a full picture, and I just felt like there was a resource that I wanted to maximize on.
Right. I'm sure that they kind of, this even with the COVID, I'm sure that kind of drew concerns as it did with me. I had it. Like I said, I asked because I got it from my wife, got it from another relative. I've been super safe, everything like that. And then it just seemed like it just came knocking on my door. Just like, hey, yeah, man, I'm COVID. Coming around, just figure out see what y'all doing. But I was more concerned, for my children. And they did not get anything, So Ms. Golden, what are your thoughts on the vaccinations?
I'm sorry, you said Miss Golden. I apologize. I think that it's really wonderful that they've worked so hard and so diligently to come up with the vaccination in such a short amount of time, which may also be a touchy subject because some people may be less apt to getting it because it happened so quickly. But I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that a similar vaccination has been under investigation or in the works for almost 20 years. Is that right, Dr. Kane?
Yes, so I'd say almost that's the case. It's a new platform that was used. It's a messenger RNA platform. Yeah. So we've been doing it for years, but this is the first time we use this technology that we've been working on for a long time with a act for against a active disease like COVID-19, where we were able to develop it in a very short time frame compared to the usual 4-year process.
Absolutely. So if patients come to me and they are wanting the vaccination, we totally encourage it. If other patients come and they are, kind of on the fence, I encourage them to do their research and look into those awesome resources that we do have at our disposal, and do what feels best for them at the time.
I think for me, I'll jump in. I will be honest, I wasn't a fan of vaccinations either. And, some of it was more of, just not knowing what to expect. I did have COVID, as did my whole family, except for my husband. He's the only one out of our whole family that didn't have it, that's here in Indianapolis. So it was interesting. I mean, I didn't feel anything. So it was kind of like, okay, like I had it and I'm stuck in my room and, I'm in quarantine by myself. But I think when the vaccine came and, really like I play in the I work with the WNBA. And, one of the things that we've tried to just encourage all of our players, like we have a list of what vaccinated people can do versus non-vaccinated people. And I think for a lot of our players and even for myself, really looking at, what the effects were. And, I don't like to be put in a box. So some of it for me was more of, if I'm in the non-vaccinated category and I can't do this, then I'm going to see all the other people doing it. And I think really that was kind of the pushing point. And then also, of course, with all the things that we do in the community and my mom, being elder in that age, and a lot of other people that we deal with through Tease Me Cafe, wanting to keep everybody safe. So that's why I got the vaccine.
So I think that there are 3 reasons that I looked at in terms of getting the vaccine. So, and I don't like needles. I don't mind giving somebody the shot. I just don't like receiving it. So I'm kind of a one-shot kind of girl. But the thing I realized is that one, it's those long haulers, what we call them, people that can have long-term complications, especially the brain fog. I have some really good friends of mine, and they have this brain fog where their memory is not sharp, calculations is not sharp, so they can go to a store, have a $20 bill, and pay for something $11 and might not be able to calculate what their change is. And they may have a roommate from school for 4 years and not remember their name. And this process can last, this brain fog, we're finding out is lasting months. And then those are the folks who have the arthritic joint symptoms. They never had any problems before, but now look like I got arthritis because my knees are always aching and my elbows and my shoulders are killing me. So there are a number of women, you can hair loss. And so there are a number of long-term complications, especially the chronic fatigue syndrome. This is where you're so tired, you don't even feel like getting out of bed to go to the bathroom. It is lasting months. And we're now going on to years with the chronic fatigue syndrome to the point that over 90% have to stop their day job. They're too tired to even carry out their job. So that was the one major factor that influenced me. But here's the second most important factor, that you can have no symptoms, you can feel great, no fever, and yet be infected with this virus, and you can transmit it to others. And you can transmit it. We're just talking normally like this. I'm putting out these invisible respiratory droplets in the air that can last over 30 minutes in the air. And I can leave that house or leave that space, and somebody walk right and stand in that same space and inhale and become infected. So you can infect loved ones, significant others, siblings, parents, grandparents, young children, whereas your immune system may protect you, but it could be life-threatening. You put your significant other or person that may be hospitalized, even in a critical care unit. And so those two major reasons is why I got my shot. I got the Johnson & Johnson, the one-shot wonder vaccine.
Okay. Wow. I'll be honest. Yeah, I had COVID back in, like I said, February. And I want to know, like I said, if anybody else, like I said, you had it, I think a couple of us did. And if you knew anybody else that also had it, and if so, do you feel like a family member? Do you feel like race? Actually, let me make sure I get my questions together. But for you guys who did have it, like just elaborate a little bit more, or if you know somebody that have it, elaborate more just kind of on your story, your thought process, what was going on.
I'll say this, I think that even when you look at, Kyrie and Lauren, you guys said that you had it last March. And I would say, like, in the beginning, when things started shutting down, I don't really feel like we thought it was like real. It's kind of one of those things it's something that you hear about, but until you're either one, you have it, or someone close to you has it, like that's when it started becoming like, okay, like this is something that's really, really serious. And obviously, I think, when I speak, a lot of mine is around the basketball world, just because, that's what I'm in every single day. And I think from sometimes as professional athletes, and sometimes, you feel like we live in a bubble. But when somebody in your bubble is affected and you really see it, you're like, okay, like this is not that it's not real for anybody else, but it's just like it hits closer, and then you start really paying attention. So, I think that when I think about just COVID in general, that's what my mind goes to, is like, yeah, like this is real. This is something. And we get emailed pretty much every day, and the numbers, I know Dr. King is like, has the number probably memorized, but every day it changes, and we get the email, and I'm just like, it's crazy how many people have been affected. And yeah. You can go back to, what was it, the Spanish flu that was way back when, that, the numbers from that, but it's just like, we weren't living there. Like, we don't know about that because I wasn't alive and I wasn't, like a part of that. So this is like the world shut down. Everybody shut down. Not the USA, not Indiana, but the world shut down. And it's just like, it's crazy to think about.
Yeah. And, as I'm like, even as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about my dear frat brother, Lucky Hall, my old baseball coach, Rich Andrew, My good friend Rhonda, she lost her father and her grandmother. And it is just 2020 just felt like it just was constant. And then you got this numbness to it because you felt so helpless after a while. Then we was in an election and then, George Floyd and then the riots. And that's what I was trying to, just kind of chime to earlier. It's like in the midst of trying to fight against this one thing, there were just so many distractions like that just kind of seem micro connected to everything, and it's like it really exposed us. Mm-hmm. I think it not just America, it exposed the world. This COVID disease, and like I said, for me personally, and this might be a crazy way to look at it, but it kind of saved my perspective. I was kind of, I was again just really sad, depressed, and when I caught it, it just made me say, man, if you keep laying here, it's just like, and you have to think about death. You have to think about, you can't be naive. You have to literally fight. And I was literally exercising. I was sweating profusely. And Dr. Kane, that brain fog is no joke. I mean, and so I'm blessed, to be, healed from it and vaccinated, because that's the weakest I've ever felt in my entire life. And so, like I said, and I'm in fairly good shape. I've only beat Tamika Catchings in the game of 21 once in my mind. So but I'm in fairly good shape. But now, one of the, and I want to go ahead. And just dive into it.
You froze for a minute.
Got you. Because like I said, we tend to be so divisive about every little thing now. So now I feel like the new divide is if you're vaccinated and if you don't. And in my opinion, I think I think we have to meet each other somewhere in the middle. Like, hey, no vaccination is. I think everybody's still kind of taking a cautiousness to it, whether you're vaccinated or not. Would anybody like to speak to that?
Well, I want to go back to the question. I mean, I don't think we gave people enough opportunity to talk about the last question. Just have you or do you know somebody personally that's affected by COVID? And I know I want to, like Kyrie and Lauren, you guys were going to share your story and just kind of what you guys went through. So I'm interested
to share our story now, because we can do that.
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay, so and I'll try to be brief. It's a little bit of a long story, but I didn't believe COVID was real. I thought it was a joke. March 3rd, I went to a sectional basketball game. No big deal. We hadn't shut down yet. I think our first case had got to Avon, Indiana, and we just kind of, everyone was going through their regular life. Fast forward to March 10th, got home from work, took a nap, woke up, and I was freezing. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cold. Are you cold? And she was like, no. She's like, you have COVID. I'm like, no, I don't. It's not real. I'm fine. Pre-existing issues. I do have high blood pressure, overweight. So, but those things, we called a hotline and I'm telling her I'm fine. Don't worry about it. The hotline said, oh, we're not worried about that. Has he been out of the country? I'm like, nope. Been around any elderly people? No, I told you I'm fine. Nothing wrong with me. Fast forward to March 16th. Now I'm in the hospital. Still don't think I have COVID. I've convinced myself I've got a really good case of pneumonia. I'm in the hospital. I'm bored. I'm like, I want to go home. If the food's nasty, I want to get out of here. So I check out of the hospital March 19th. Yes, that is not smart. I left the hospital on my own volition. One nurse said to me, you sure you should leave? I was like, yeah, I'm out of here. I get home maybe 3:00 and I can't breathe. My oxygen level is 76. So we call an ambulance and they won't put me in the ambulance. So my wife, thank goodness for her, had to drive me back to the hospital. I get to the hospital. They immediately say, you need a chest tube. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't know what that means. Is it going to hurt? They say, no, I'm fine. About 2 a.m. March 20th, I was intubated and, put into a medically induced coma. And that's where Lauren will not take over and talk because I was asleep for the next 2 weeks. So this is where she really battled and the world kind of took a turn and I just didn't see it.
I think our a big part of the story is that we just didn't have test results. Like when this was all going down, test results were really slow. So they weren't diagnosing him with COVID, so they weren't treating him with COVID. And I was getting frustrated because when we first got there, I could barely understand him. And they were saying, oh, it's just asthma, we'll give him an inhaler. And I knew it just was not asthma. And I was one of the people who, before it got big, I was reading the stories and I was like, this is not a conspiracy. There was some really smart people that I knew that were like pantry loading and stuff. And so I kind of believed it, even when my friends didn't.
I didn't.
And I just was really nervous that this would happen to us. So, when he's in a coma, I'm talking to the media. I'm just getting word out there to our friends because he's really known in the city. And I wanted other people to know.
I'm so sorry, excuse us.
How serious it was. And I knew that if they saw that he had it and if they knew our story, that people would take it more serious. And I'm 6 months pregnant at this point. All I could do was like put an alarm to eat and watch the news every day, watch the news, see what was out there. I would write the infectious disease doctors, ask if they could try this, could they try that? And, the doctors were, at this point, they had a little more flexibility, and the nurses too, to answer the phone each time, to call and FaceTime and do all that stuff because it wasn't as prominent, I guess. There wasn't as much volume. And thank God we were right in the beginning, because in the middle, every nurse can't take an iPad in there. Every doctor can't write you back because you want to tell your story about your husband. And I'd say, play Michael Jackson, or tell them that, make it a sport that he has to get up and eat or something. And so I think for me, the most rewarding part was like when he was able to take the intubation off and he could like wake up and see us. He didn't know what really happened, but I was just so happy for each breath, because that was not a thing for a while. And you start planning your life. You're like, what am I going to do? They called about DNR. I was never had to sign a DNR. I don't know anything about that. Right. So I'm thankful for the experience. And I think we both cherish life a little bit more now. And
certainly,
we are so blessed to have a story that looked like this, and Zara's healthy and happy
and loud.
And I think that we just really wanted to be leaders in our community as far as people taking it serious and not trying to infect anyone else, because it was more than just going on a cruise and coming home. He was simply going to a basketball game and got sick. So.
And that was the most ridiculous part, obviously, from my standpoint, is I really talked myself into not having it. I mean, I didn't want to hear it. Even when I woke up April 1st, and I said, so I didn't have COVID, did I? She said, what? Yes, you did. I was like, they never told me. Well, no, because you went into a coma, but they tested you while you were asleep, and yes, you had it. I was like, wow, okay. Guess I was wrong. And then to wake up and, you are going through kind of recovery, and then get out of the hospital, and there's nobody outside. And I'm just looking around like, where are the people? She's like, oh yeah, no, people don't go outside anymore. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, there's no people stay in the house. We're shut down. I'm like, oh, okay. So very a roller coaster ride, but again, I guess it's a blessing it was early, because if that happens in May, I don't know what it looks like.
Right. And, a big part of that, he mentioned the ambulance not taking him. We just weren't set up. Like, they could not risk taking a COVID patient into the ambulance, because they were like, what happens if there's an emergency? We have to spray our whole van down. We don't have infrastructure. You're going to have to take him. And I was like, oh my goodness, what do you mean you can't take him? And so here I am zooming through the streets to get him to the hospital. There was just so many things back then that weren't right. And so when I see us figuring it out, and I see the infrastructure, I see the mask, I see the, nice fancy sanitized machines, we got it. We got it late, but we figured it out. I wish we were sooner and more prepared, but we did figure it out over time. And I think that's a blessing in itself. I hope we learned something from this.
I unfortunately was asked to see a number of patients concerned about the COVID-19, and sometimes with minorities, because of our high mortality. So for our older Black community, and they have chronic medical conditions like diabetes or asthma or kidney failure, we were the highest rates of people being hospitalized, and we were the highest in the intensive care units. But how painful is it that you're a daughter and your father may be dying or your mother may be dying, and yet you're not allowed to see your parent. Only the spouse can get in, and usually they didn't let the spouse in until, wow, you've got maybe 24, 48 hours before you're going to die. And so how many people had their loved ones die and they really didn't have a good chance to have any communications or say what they want to say, and knowing that their loved ones were dying sometimes without them. So that's just was such a painful process, I think, early on. And here's the other part that was early on. A lot of minorities, if they wanted to get tested, you know, emergency rooms might tell you, hey, well, listen, we got so much COVID diagnosis here. Don't come to the ER because you might get infected, okay? But then if you become a healthcare system and offering vaccine, well, I don't know. Now you told me not to come when I felt I was sick and I need to be tested. And now you want to vaccinate me, but you know, what's that logic about I shouldn't be coming there and then tough it out at home unless I feel like I'm really dying? And so sometimes just these kind of mixed messages that have created some hesitancy on a number of our folks getting vaccinated, or they don't always have able to go to the same place where they normally get their vaccinations. And so I'm looking at a new provider. And so what's the ability related to this? But all of us on this call, I believe we're fortunate that we can afford the internet. So we might be able to do some telehealth. But I can't tell you the number of folks low income, don't have access to internet, or they may be older and they're not techie like I've learned to be. And so how do they get the education? How do they have someone answer their questions? And so this has been a huge burden for us, I think, as Blacks. And my heart broke when we had a person come in. He got his vaccine. He was I want to say he was 70, 75 years of age. And he says, I'm so glad I'm finally getting my vaccine. But you seem so sad. He says, yes, my wife died a month ago. And if we'd had this vaccine 1 month earlier, my wife would be here. But I'm going to see my grandkids. I want to know I'm safe to see my grandkids. And so I'm taking this vaccine so I know that I'm not going to spread this infection to anybody else. And I was lucky that I didn't contract the infection. So,
Dr. Kane, I'm going to kind of comment on what you said about, family not being able to see people. We talked about earlier people that you knew were affected. I went to high school with a young lady. Her husband passed away from COVID. He died the week after I got in the hospital, and she called one day and he was fine. And the next day she called and they said, oh, he didn't make it, which is just devastating. And when it first hit, no one could get in the hospital. People were just dying alone. One big thing I remember once I woke up is I didn't know it at the time until I was getting out, but everyone around the ICU was dying. And people would come ask me what was my story, because here I was, this one lone guy that was surviving, and they couldn't figure out how. I was blessed. It wasn't anything, obviously, I did special. But even when I left, my doctor, he thanked me because I think he had lost a lot of patients. And he didn't lose me. And in March of 2020, the death toll, obviously, it rose up so quick, but it affected people. And you were alone. There was nothing. They couldn't let family up there because they were just too unsafe. So that's a real burden. And then, like you said, but then you want me to come in here and get a vaccination, but you told me I couldn't come in here at all to be with family. So it's definitely a catch-22, trying to navigate what's right and what's not.
It's tough. And what's even more scary now is we're having this new variant strain that's coming out now. It's called the Delta variant. It originated from India, but we also had the United Kingdom first mutated strain that's more contagious, and then strains coming from South Africa, and then Brazil, and now the Delta variant that in 60 days in Great Britain, it became the dominant COVID-19 strain in 60 days, 40% way more contagious than the regular strain that we know of. And we're concerned that it may have more severe complications. And so, wow, if we don't hurry up and get vaccinated, I think we're going to see a huge number of hospitalizations and life-threatening illnesses. And who's the group that's going to be the most vulnerable to these super spread events? In Marion County, only 18% of Blacks are vaccinated compared to 37% of whites. So our Blacks are 1/2 the percentage of being vaccinated compared to our white counterparts. And guys, don't be between the age of 25 to 39 years of age. So you're in the low 30s just for that particular age group of being vaccinated. Now, we do pretty decent if you're Black and over the age of 65. But the younger you are, 20 to 25, only 23% of our Black men are vaccinated. And ladies, I do know we are the superior species compared to men. I know you contribute, but we're the ones that have the babies, okay? And we have a higher rate of vaccination compared to the men. So I think we've got one leg up a little bit compared to the males in this vaccination rate. But we've got to reach a 50% vaccination rate, at least in our community, to reach that herd immunity. Because Lauren, when he got his COVID-19 infection, after that, he developed a natural immunity for a couple of months. So, you didn't have to have the vaccine right away because you've got a natural immunity. So you're protected for a couple of months. So if we add the number of people who've had a diagnosis of COVID-19 for a couple of months, and if that percent is like about 30% in our community, and then I've got 50% of the people getting vaccinated to develop immunity, that's a total of 80% of people in our community that's protected from the transmission of this COVID-19. So we got a work cut out for us.
So let me ask you this then. You just talked about the new strain and
the Delta, yes.
Yeah, the Delta. How does that play in, or how does that affect whether you get the vaccine or not?
So we know that if you get the vaccine, you've got chances to help fight it off. We know that both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, and even the Johnson & Johnson, they do very well against the United Kingdom mutated strain. They do so much better against the South African strain, but we don't know how effective they're going to be against this Delta strain. But you want to have some protection. It may not be full protection, but some protection can prevent you from contracting this mutated strain if you've already got your antibodies. In one shot from a Pfizer Moderna, you're 50% protected, but with 2 shots from these virulent strains, you're almost 88% protective from these mutated strains. So the sooner and the quicker that you can get this vaccination, the better.
Yeah, I think that the statistics that you shared are just very staggering. And I think that the opt-out for some people is very multifactorial, and kind of like a few of the other people have spoken about. I think it goes back to the trust in the healthcare system, and that goes back hundreds of years for African-American people. And I can't apologize for it because I wasn't there, but the healthcare system has not always treated African-American or Black people well. The Tuskegee experiment, for example, I mean, the world has just wreaked havoc and not ensued trust in the healthcare system or in vaccinations or in anything surrounding healthcare for Black people. And for that, I am so sorry. You know, I am obviously a Caucasian individual, and I can't take full responsibility once again, but it's just incredibly sad to me that people used other people in that way. But those statistics, once again, are incredible. And I hope too that, you know, healthcare professionals that are caring and reaching out and being honest and, you know, just being a person, treating people like people can change that face. Because I think that everybody deserves health and a livelihood that is not put at risk because of fear. We're all individuals, we're all people, and our lives are valuable and we are valuable. So I do think that it's a multifactorial opt-out for a lot of people. So I hope, like you said, Dr. Kane, that we can change that for many, many people.
Well, I think the key thing is, do we have shared decision-making when I'm talking to my healthcare professional? Mm-hmm. It's shared, that I'm respected for my thought processes and what my concerns are. But our healthcare system is not always conducive to really taking the time to give you a lot of the education.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, it can take for us now 45 minutes to be able to have all my questions asked and answered.
Yes, absolutely.
But I don't get reimbursed for those 45 minutes, okay?
Right.
And so I may not be able to survive in my practice if it's taking me 45 minutes to in 1 hour. Mm-hmm. And I get reimbursed, especially if you're Black provider and you're seeing a lot of low-income patients. How do you keep your practice afloat? Mm-hmm. But you got to take a lot of time now to answer these questions. And let me tell you, things are changing every day. Absolutely. You know, we had something in the news today, I hate to say it, related to we're seeing higher reports of myocarditis, inflammation of the heart, mm-hmm. seen in young Black males that's coming out. So is that something we have to be worried about? Is there a causal relationship with the vaccine? And so these are questions that we have to really stay up to date and abreast related to what's going on, related to these vaccines and what's happening with our community and COVID cases.
Absolutely.
All right. And just for you guys viewing in, thank you guys for that input. It was mentioned a little bit about the Tuskegee experiment. And just for those who are not aware, just kind of go into a little bit brief detail. So it's in reference to the Tuskegee syphilis study. Was pretty much in Black males conducted around between 1932 to 1972 by the United States Public Health Service and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And the purpose of the study was, again, observe the natural history of untreated syphilis. So again, it wasn't necessarily that it was airborne or anything like that, but again, we're talking about the mistreatment. 1972, that's a long time to mistreat.
Yes. So here's what happened, though. I was on an advisory consulting committee for CDC related to the generations of families from those 600 men that had syphilis. Back in those days, there was a high prevalence of syphilis, and they didn't have a real good treatment for syphilis. They treated syphilis with arsenic, you know, for arsenic poisoning. You heard about that? and they gave people mercury to treat the syphilis. And it only cured about a third of the folks with syphilis. But as you can understand, with arsenic and mercury, some people died from that treatment. So they says, well, we want to watch to see what kind of complications come from syphilis. So it started in 1932, and that was fine. But guess what? A cure was discovered in 1941. So in 1945, we had a treatment that would cure syphilis 100% in 1945. But they let the white patients in similar studies get treated, but they decided not to treat the Black patients. They were telling Black patients, you were getting a treatment, but it was a placebo. You know, it's like sort of like sugar water. It was not a real treatment. So from 1945 till that study ended in 1972, they could have saved so many Black men because you get brain damage from long-term syphilis, and you get a weakening of your heart. You get an aneurysm of your heart. And if that ruptures, you die. Not even talking about the pain related to arthritis in these patients with syphilis. So we withheld the right treatment related to the Tuskegee syphilis. Now, I'm glad to say you can't do those studies anymore like that. You have to have an internal review board to make sure something like that doesn't happen again. And so no medical school, no academic institution can do a research study or do experimentals or clinical trials on people until that's been looked at very, very carefully. But we did see a number of congenital syphilis, birth defects in the babies born from the parents and fathers who had the syphilis.
And Dr. Kane, that's one of the questions that came from the Facebook chat. They hear a lot of talks about the Tuskegee experiment. Can you hear how COVID vaccination is not similar?
So it's not similar because we're not trying to withhold treatment. We want you to get treatment. But the Tuskegee syphilis experiment was, we had a treatment for you. We could prevent deaths related to you. We could prevent brain damage to you, heart failure to your hearts, and you were getting this brain damage and heart failure to your hearts in your 20s. And so we withheld the appropriate treatment we knew would make a difference, because what they said on the basis of science, I wanted to see what happened to you if you didn't get treated. Okay? Inhumane. Never should have happened.
Well, I think that, and when we started this conversation, we talked a little bit about the race aspect. And, even as we've gone on, we've talked about just the miscommunication of, okay, you didn't want me to come to the hospital, now you want me to come to the hospital to get vaccinated. Don't you think that from the race and from, Black and brown community, thinking about the experiment and thinking about just what last year and everything that was a part, like, not just from COVID, but everything else that came with COVID, do you feel like that had played a huge part? I mean, this is the question to everybody. Do you feel like that had played a huge part in why the numbers amongst Black communities are so low?
So I think it has played a major role. It's definitely had a major impact for why some people have not been vaccinated. But we also got to understand there's a higher rate of poverty in the Black community compared to our white counterparts, almost 25%. So a lot of us don't always have a primary care provider. We don't have someone we can talk to and educate. We may get our care in the emergency rooms. And let me tell you about Black males now who are young. They don't really go see the doctors like, the females go to see a doctor, So, they don't, I'm healthy. I've got nothing wrong with me. I don't get sick. I don't go in the hospitals. So why do I need to take some medicine when I'm invincible and I'm fine? So you got that type of mentality also with a lot of our young Black males. It's a problem with the white young males, but it's even a greater problem, I think, with the Black males, because you know you out there in that community. I'm a bad brother. I'm bad, okay, and so you got to keep up that brand and image of yourself. You know, I'm strong and nothing can touch me, and so that's tough. I got to say, hey, it ain't about you. You know, it's about, do you want to protect your loved ones? You have a newborn baby. Do you want to bring an infection to your newborn baby? Okay. You're concerned about your sibling? Are your parents? Are your grandparents? So I know you bad. And you may not have any problems. But oh my God, do you want to protect your loved ones? And that means you have a certain responsibility, at least, to be well read, you know, in terms of making these decisions. Listen, be able to ask your questions. And then we just hope you are able to at least, you know, make a decision based on the science, you know, if possible.
Okay, I wanted to ask this question. It's in reference to an article that was in the Indy Star this past April. It went along and said, while Black people comprise about 9.4% of Indiana's population over the age of 16, Black residents comprise about 5% of those who have been vaccinated, according to the state's dashboard. Latino people comprise 6.2% of the state's population, and 2.4% of those have been vaccinated. When I went over to the dashboard, I know we talked to it, I'm looking at it right now, and I thought that was interesting because, I want to make sure I said this right. So white, it was 81.8, and so I'm just like, okay, that's a vast difference there. But just listening to those statistics and the dashboards on the link that we sent out earlier, what are your thoughts? And this is for everyone. What are your thoughts in regards to this statistic? And do you think the low percentages of those vaccinated is due to people opting out of vaccinations or lack of availability?
Tell me when you're ready for me to answer. I don't want to prejudice anybody else's
comment. Okay, go bring it. Anybody?
I was going to share here because this is something that I definitely tried to do when Kyrie was sick, was educating his friends on taking care of themselves and getting back into going to the doctor visits, because he didn't know he had a pre-existing condition, really, because you didn't go to the doctor the way he was supposed to, or take his medicine the way he was supposed to.
I purposely ignored my high blood pressure for years.
Yeah. And
because you said I'm invincible. You're right, Dr. Kane. I'm not going to the doctor. I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to die. I'm 25, 27, 28,
yeah.
30. I'll be fine until I wasn't fine.
Right. And I think that's a big thing in our community. And it's not just because he did it. It's because his dad did it and his dad's dad did it. And it's just the way that our families have constantly only gone when someone broke an arm. And then you go to the ER. You didn't go to the doctor, twice a year with your normal provider. And we still to this day have to say, who is the normal provider? Like, we're going to do this for Zara. We're going to make sure she has a consistent practice of going to the doctor, even when nothing is wrong, because you just never know. And so I think it's a double edge there. I do think people don't have resources in some instances. And then I think people aren't maximizing the resources they do have. I have great insurance and I still don't go to a normal provider. As women, we go, right, all the time. So you think that's enough, but there's still more. There's so much more out there that we have to do to take care of ourselves mentally, physically. It just has to be a thing anymore.
Kristen, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like Dr. Kane was saying earlier, those statistics they're staggering. And I think that, like I said earlier too, it is multifactorial. I think that, like everyone has said, access is a problem. Yes, the vaccines are readily available at Walgreens, Target, CVS. You see the commercials, you see the advertisements, you hear them when you call. But that means somebody has to get them to that facility to get the vaccination, or they have to know how to read to see that is being advertised, or, there are just different roadblocks that are potentially inhibiting people from getting the vaccine, or from learning more about it, or from having their questions answered. Like we said, the accessibility is just either not there or really tough to come by those excellent resources that are available. But yeah, it's just, again, multifactorial in my opinion.
And Dr. Kane, before you go ahead and dig all into this information, I want to give a shout out again to AARP. I want to thank our sponsors, their partnership for us. And again, I want to tune right back. Dr. Kane, what were your thoughts and what do you think it is?
So let me also just compliment AARP. They're just a great group, and I've always appreciated speaking on their behalf and being not only on their national town meeting, but our Indiana town meeting. So a great group, and boy, a sharp organization to affiliate with. I think our biggest problem at the start of the epidemic is that we had better sites for our white patients to access the vaccine and the testing compared to a lot of Blacks. One of our issues, of course, always is if you don't have access to a primary care provider, I think it's difficult. And it's just only more recently now are we able to do the vaccinations in our communities. So when this epidemic started, our health department used to give vaccinations in the community for a lot of people who may not have a provider. And they used to come to the health department to get their vaccinations. But once the vaccinations were out, or even, let's just even say testing that was out, the testing wasn't available to local health departments. They were available to the hospital systems, but they weren't available to the local health departments until about, I want to say at least maybe 6 weeks later down the pike. And then that happened also with vaccinations as well, where they're available at hospital systems, but not necessarily local health departments, where we were able to provide vaccinations to everybody. But the vaccines, Black folks don't live as long sometimes as their white counterparts. So we don't live at a much higher rate past 80 years of age. Our lifespan is not quite as long as the 80 years of age. And we made a conscious decision, and I was on the vaccine committee, to say, let's start vaccinating the oldest, because they're the ones who have the highest morbidity, mortality, highest hospitalizations. But the majority of our Blacks were in that 60 to 65 range, or a little bit lower. So we had so many more whites who were older getting vaccinated first. So sort of like had like a little head start, because there weren't as many of us, greater than 80 years of age, and then greater than 75 compared to our white counterparts. So that's a little bit why we got behind, and because we are more, and we really went homeless. I can't tell you how many people couldn't pay their rent, lost their home mortgages, and whatever. That care package, the first care package that went out, it didn't make it down to our folks. And so a lot of homeless individuals, we make up the majority, African Americans make up the majority of homeless populations. So, hey, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to feed myself, or do I have a house over my head? Getting that vaccine is not my number one priority. And with us not doing living wage, we're a minimum wage state. That means minimum wage. I'm not making enough money to pay my rent, pay my utilities, put food on my table, okay? And heaven forbid if I have to have daycare. So it's $7.25, that ain't changed for 20 years. How tough is it to be worried about getting a vaccine compared to the essential services that we need? And that's about 25% of our Marion County population, especially related to African Americans and even Latino X population. We got to talk about that, because there are different languages that are out there, okay? So I'm calling for a test and someone speaking Spanish, Okay. So how do I know where to go and get a test on speaking Spanish? But we didn't even realize how many people that can't even read. I'm not talking about health literacy. I'm talking about literacy in general.
Yeah.
So we're thinking, patting ourselves on the back. Hey, we got all our materials in 3rd and 4th grade. You know, we think we're bad, and folks can't even read, and we didn't even know it. So many challenges and gaps that got highlighted as a result of this pandemic. You know, part of it, structural racism over time, okay? But it's our social determinants, okay, that we've had to look at and we need to address if we're going to have better health outcomes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just so you guys know, I ran into Dr. Kane about a month and a half ago. Me and my fraternity brothers, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. We were out there on the east side, and I was out there holding up signs and get your COVID shot, get your COVID. I mean, I'm really out here hustling to get a COVID shot for people, but you know, it was.
And y'all did a fantastic job. I just need more like you to come and help us out.
Y'all make sure y'all spread that. Need more like Q's, rude to the bros. But anyway,
that ain't what she said.
Okay, that's what I heard. And it's just because I know we talked about our stories, but Kyrie, you said you're in education, right? So white, black, Hispanic, any other race, what has been communicated to this generation that's coming up, that's graduating, that had to get their graduations postponed? You know, do you think that they really got the tone? Do you think they really to pick up the torch to say, you know, we need to not just kind of get stuck in here and let things go by and by, but do you think that they got the point? What's kind of been the?
Absolutely not. 100% no. And I love the kids. I love all my students. They saw this. After a while, they got tired of it and said, this is not real. Doesn't affect me. It was a vacation that turned into too long of a vacation. Even kids that interacted with me, you know, they know it's real because they saw me almost die. But in terms of it affecting them, they all sat in that same gym I sat in, and they all walked out just fine. So their level of invincibility is through the roof because clearly Mr. Abdullah got sick. And I saw him at the game, and I was fine. So if we're hoping that they're going to carry the torch and get people to kind of see what's going on, I just don't think they're ready because they don't think it can affect them. Even if they got it and they were sick for 2 days and they were like, I'm good. I do know some kids that got vaccinated, and that was more so because their parents probably said, you need to get this if you want to go out and have the fun you want to have.
Well, I think the other thing is, I think if you're interested in sports, so I think that may also be a driving factor because you don't want to, you know, those coaches don't want to have their players out. And don't let it be a star player or you going to affect the rest of my team. So I think one of the driving forces that could be for us, for the young Black male, is if they're involved in sports and hopefully, you know, there's some encouragement to say, we don't, you know, we want you to be healthy when you're playing and we don't want to have to lose an important contest because, you know, for some of our young Black males, sports is their way out, they feel. If I've got talent, I need somebody, these agents to come and recognize me. And the greater my team achieves, oh, people will be looking at me. You know, I might get a scholarship or whatever to a college. So that's one vehicle. I think we need to figure out a way how we can use that as a challenge, you know, Tamika. So to think about that from a sports standpoint.
Well, I know, like even my little nephews, and Kyrie, I'm gonna hand it back to you, but even my little nephews, I mean, both of them play on sport teams and had to sit out for 10 to 14 days before they can get back on the floor. And then Lord knows, as soon as they got back, something happened in school or something happened with another player on the team, and then they were out again. So definitely from the sports aspect, and even from, I said this in the beginning, even from the W standpoint, one of the main reasons I got vaccinated was because it's like, okay, there's a list of what you can do as a vaccinated player or person and what you cannot do as non-vaccinated. And I don't want to be put in that box of not being able to have the freedom that we took for granted, really.
Hey, Kristen, as a family nurse practitioner, what are the final thoughts to parents who are trying to decide if they would like their children vaccinated?
Yeah, I mean, and I think I said, I'm not muted. Okay. I thought I was muted for a second. I apologize. I would love for them to do their own research and figure out where their comfort level is and go from there. Every family is different. Children have different illnesses that could place them at greater risk for more severe illness with COVID. Some kids, like you have all said, have had COVID and have been sick for 2 days and been just fine. So they have to weigh that risk. What's the risk versus the benefit? And like Ms. Ketchen said, like, if you don't want to be placed in that, you cannot do this box, apparently the vaccine would be more apt for your lifestyle. But again, I think more parents that I've spoken with recently have been concerned about, oh, it's going to change my children's DNA or it's going to affect them long term, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that most of those theories have been disproven. And I'm hoping that they're getting the good information and seeking out the valid resources. You know what I mean? Because I do think that they are just overwhelmed or inundated with potentially false information. And so then they run with that and they're convinced that it's not the way to go. And unfortunately, I think social media can play a huge part in that. Lots of people have very strong opinions one way or another. And a lot of people are subject to those opinions. So yeah, I would just say for them to do their research and to go with whatever feels best in their gut. I think that parents' intuition is everything. Like I said, I have 3 children of my own, none of age yet that would be, vaccinated. But yeah, it would definitely be a conversation between my husband and I, and we would go forth.
So let me ask you this. What do you think about incentives? Would that make a difference? So someone got a gift card of $20, would they get vaccinated for that? Or so I'm just curious to know that. We're going to have a big mass vaccination this Saturday, really trying to target 12 to 15-year-olds. And the Simon Malls, own the Pacers and those guys, they're going to give us a $250. Oh, so Tamika, you would know the Simons, right? They're going to give us a $250 gift card for someone to have the possibility of winning. But we may have gift cards to like the Finish Line, for tennis shoes or whatever, or gas cards, to a gas station, or maybe food insecurity, like Myers or Subway or something like that. Do you think that will make a difference? I'm just curious.
I think that the incentive-based things, I don't know if this question was for me, but incentives work on people under 18. The 25-year-old doesn't want to get vaccinated. You can't incentivize him. He's just gotten a check from the government as far as his stimulus. $250 won't get him or her. But like you talked about, a lot of young Black males, my age, I'm 34, $250 won't get them to get vaccinated. But the 17-year-old, certainly, you can get them in there. I just don't know how we're going to get that chunk of people ages 21 to 40 vaccinated. The incentive won't get it. Now, another stimulus check will get them vaccinated, but that's not happening. We're not going to get that. That would get everybody vaccinated.
And Dr. Kane, when I hear about incentives, because they do it in corporate America too, the more access you get if you have it, sometimes I just don't know if it drives the right behaviors, because that's what's publicized, is getting the gift card. And then it becomes, for those who aren't worried about that, then it's more of a conspiracy and see, they're going to pay you to get this. And now they just want to test on you. So I don't know if it drives the right behaviors. It does increase the volume of people who get it, of course, but I don't know. It definitely kind of sparked some controversy on social media when those.
So there's a lot of controversy about that. Are we teaching them a bad practice in order to make the community safe? So it's just a hard deal. But at the other side of the coin, you and I can afford to get in the car and go where I want to go. Someone might want that $20 and they're gonna, put some gas in their car, and they might come and get vaccinated. Possibly, we hope. Well, they will in order to get that $20 gift card. Yes, they'll come and they may come and get vaccinated. So, is it being used for essential services? That might be the key for some of them as an incentive. Absolutely. Even food insecurity is a problem.
Absolutely, and I think I'm gonna ask this question because Mother Wanda Scott said, "What do you think about the honor system with wearing a mask if you're not vaccinated?"
It's like the speed limit. No, you're not going to get everybody to admit that they're vaccinated. I mean, in fact, if you tell me I have to wear a mask, I don't have to carry my card on me, the people are going to lie. That's just kind of the way the world is kind of set up. Nobody goes 35 and 35 all the time. They're going to go 50 in the 35, and people are going to walk into places without a vaccine, and without a mask, because who can prove it?
Yeah,
that's kind of the way of the world, unfortunately.
So yes, we have to use the honor system, unfortunately, and yes, you're going to have some people who they don't believe in this. They think it's a hoax and whatever, and you're infringing on my personal rights. But I think we have a significant number of honorable people who are responsive. And if it means that we're trying to protect our children, because right now we don't have a vaccine to protect our children under the age of 12. So who's protecting this vulnerable group? And I think you'll have a significant number of people who will wear their masks if they're unvaccinated, depending on what the requirements are. But will it be everybody? I'm afraid, of course not. Okay.
And then I mean, so we know we like I said, folks aren't getting vaccinated. And again, we brought up, previous experiments, but like I said, I got the vaccination, but I also saw stories, and I think everybody was watching in the beginning because everybody was having different reactions to vaccinations. And some people even became almost.
Well, they got that breakthrough infection. Which baseball team? And they all got vaccinated, but still they got infected. We do have to honestly say that the efficacy for the vaccines is not 100%. So we know for both Moderna and Pfizer, the effectiveness, I think now they're saying, is preventing infection in 90 to 91% of people, but it's not 100%. So some people's immune system is different and won't always have a response of antibodies, but it does prevent hospitalizations. And the most important thing is it has so far prevented deaths, okay? And we've had 183 million Americans have been vaccinated to date. And those vaccines are preventing hospitalizations, and most importantly, they're preventing deaths.
Preventing deaths.
Now I want to go back for a second because you said that there was not a vaccine for kids 12 and under, but
yes, for 11 years. Yeah, the 11 years
and under. So this is kind of like a conflict of information because remember early on they were saying that kids were very unlikely to get COVID, and that's why it was like I remember hearing that kids were not likely to get to contract COVID.
Well, they are contracting COVID, but their rate of cases is very, very low compared to adults. Okay, so if you're 5 years and under, you're not seeing as many infections, but we are seeing with this Delta variant that they are having this inflammatory type of syndrome that impacts all the different organs of the body. COVID can impact the lungs, the brain, the heart, the kidneys. So we're seeing a higher rate of infections now in our teenagers, okay? Most concerning. So, and those numbers are increasing. So we do have to be very, very concerned about that. But like you said, 43% of our cases are in the 18 to 29 years of age. So 43%, almost a half of our cases. And they're the ones, who may not be hospitalized, don't feel sick. They have no symptoms. They are the asymptomatic people that transmit these infections. They're out there transmitting and they don't even know it, but they are transmitting to significant people who may be more vulnerable.
I think education is the key, and we have 15 minutes left. One of the things and one of the questions that I wrote down earlier is, we talk about all the things that maybe we're not doing, and there's a lot of challenges that we're going through. So the one question I would say is, how do we create change, and how do we allow people? I mean, you brought up even just the language barrier. Excuse me, the language barrier, access. Can't read. I mean, there's a lot of different things that have been brought up through our conversation. But I want to start with Kristen and then go to Kyrie and Lauren, and then to Dr. Kane, and Eric and I will kind of round it out. But like thinking about change and thinking about how do we create change? I'm all about impact, and I'm all about, okay, like we know what we're not doing, and we know what's not been going on, but how can we got people that are watching and listening, how can we create change through education, or just how do we make impact? Like, how do we make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having an open door policy is key. Just making sure that people are aware that you're available, that the information that you're sharing is the most up to date that you have at the time, because like we've said, it changes by the minute sometimes. And just, putting yourself out there and sharing the information that you've been given or that you've learned, or and sharing your story like Kyrie and Laura have done, and just making sure that people are aware that this is real, and that there is an option with vaccination. And, it's just the fact that we have to remain available as healthcare professionals and as people. Once again, I just go back to being a person. We just have to be there for one another, and we can't close our door. We can't say, oh, well, it's just not a conversation I'm ready to have. We have to keep this line of communication very open and very honest, and sharing everything that, that is real. So
I think, we have got to increase the resilience of the very people we want to reach. And we've got to start giving more resources to the folks that are on the front lines, our grassroots organizations, the people in those social networks that know their fans and their colleagues. We got to start giving them some resources. We got to help train them and educate them to help them do the community outreach for us. So, we have all this money that's available for this COVID-19, but does it really get down to the community who's best to sometimes educate themselves if we can give them resources? So that's why we've just recently given $1 million in many grants to predominantly minority-based organizations. And we have a Burmese population here, let me just say, that's got 12 different languages, okay? And 3 of those languages are the main language, but how do I do outreach to them? Okay, so we need to figure out how to get those resources, how to educate them, and how do we empower these organizations? You know, how do we carry them to the next level? How do I strengthen them as an organization so they are sustainable and they can continue to educate? So I think that's the number one thing, at least from my perspective. And I want to say that the city of Indianapolis with the Marion County Public Health Department, and there's an organization out of New York called Results Saving Lives under direction of Dr. Tom Frieden. He's the former director of CDC, who has helped to contribute to at least $300,000 to this $1 million mini grant that we're going to see, does this have an impact? Because if this has an impact, you know, and people are doing their own education or having their own mobile vaccination events or telling us what the issues and the challenges are, maybe, just maybe, we can make a difference. But communication, communication, communication. So I got to thank you again, the Green Eye Bandit, Dr. Tamika Catchings, and just, hey, my colleagues here, other panel speakers. It's by getting this type of communication out for people to hear the different perspectives that they would otherwise not even know about. You are the most critical piece for us in being a trusted messenger out into the community. And I can't just thank you enough for having this wonderful opportunity. Sorry, Eric, Tamika is my heart, okay? And this is where the female, superior female comes in, because I recognize her talent, her smarts, and what just the overwhelming impact in this community. And anytime I have the honor, just the honor of being in her presence, oh my God, okay, what can I say?
You don't have to apologize. I feel the same way.
I feel the same way when I'm around great people. So, all right, Kyrie and Lauren.
I think we have to be the change and be the example. We have to do the things that we are talking about. We have to go get the vaccination and tell people why it's important, especially people our age. They need to see us doing it. Go ahead.
And we kind of talked about this earlier, but I think a lot of the gaps are deeply rooted in our community, and some of the best practices just have to be normalized. Going to the doctor twice a year and talking to your friends about that visit, and then reminding them when are they going to get their visit. And, you know, just, I think there's so many parts of health and education and taking care of yourself that we don't always do in our community. And we could easily make it a focus by just being the lead and then talking to others about it and encouraging them to do it. And then hopefully they take that same leadership within their friends and family members. But there's just so many deeply rooted gaps that were highlighted throughout this entire pandemic that I think sometimes we got to go back to the simple things we can control, which is just, like Dr. Kane said, talk about it, be involved, do your part, you know, and be vocal about it, and not kind of keeping those resources to yourself.
Hey guys, can I add, based on what you just said, that I also think that it says a lot to the community if we can address those issues that are important to them. So it's just not only COVID pandemic. I'm making it my mission that I'm going to do whatever it takes to raise the living wage for our communities, okay? So why are we slaving for 2 jobs? We're tired, exhausted, we're at home, and we're working 8 hours, and yet inflation is killing us, but our salaries have not competed at the same level. So I also think that, you know, if we can get on board together about something that can impact a major social determinant that's very positive for our community, I think it helps a little bit, you know, continuing to send a message. We're trying to do something positive on your behalf.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Kristen, did you chime in on the change, when the change gonna come?
Yep, she chimed in. She started it off.
Okay.
I got my notes right here. I'm gonna go back through it.
No, this like I said, this whole conversation is like, just trying to wrap your mind around everything. And then because like COVID, like we said, COVID is one thing, but it's just so many pre-existing things. And I mean, me just being in education as well. And I've been thinking about this whole initiative, like just how do we heal and build, and because again, it's essential. I'm still relatively young, got 3 kids, and I just, I don't want to see this next generation repeating things that they could have learned, and yeah. And I don't want our generation to, just kind of, go on idly by and, like I said, because I told myself earlier, wouldn't it be a shame that we learned nothing, in terms of how to be humans again, from this whole COVID pandemic. Oh, hello, kitty cat.
She is well educated. I just have to let you know.
Yeah,
one of my star pupils, okay?
So, but were there any, I know we talked about change, were there any more last comments or any last guys or?
I'll kind of wrap it up a little bit. One of the things that I just appreciate having a conversation. I just remember countless days last year, my husband just sitting in front of the TV and watching the news like nonstop. And I just can't take this. I don't like, I'm too positive of a person. So like infusing your mind and your brain and your body with constant negativity, if it's not from the deaths, it's from killings. If it's not from that, it's from, the social justice and just like everything. I just had to like take a pause. And, one of the things when I think about change is we all have our own circle of influence. And, I kind of look at this as like faith in a sense of, faith is a big part of who I am, but I don't go around carrying a Bible telling people like, you need to follow the Bible and you need to, follow God. And it's almost, in a sense, almost the same thing as far as the vaccination. And I think Kristen kind of said it the best, like people need to educate themselves, but we can do our part in education as well. And, at the end of the day, people are going to make a decision based on what's best for them and their families. And, one thing that I would say is I'm always one that I will speak, and the ones that listen are the ones that I'm going to be drawn to. I don't necessarily, when you spend so much time focusing on, and I know this might be right or wrong, but when you spend so much time focusing on the 1 or 2 people that won't listen, then you get caught up, or other people walk away that might have wanted the education and wanted the time and just needed you to tell and explain just a little bit more, like, why am I getting this? And so I think my challenge to not only myself, but my challenge to all of us is to continue to educate ourselves, to continue to share, like Kyrie and Lauren, like sharing your story and just what you've been through, and specifically for young Black men, because they do think that they're invincible. And I have, nephews and, brother-in-laws and all types of like cousins and everything that, feel like they're in that invincible era. And so being able to have conversations like this, I think there's a lot of people that are listening and watching, sharing the information when you have it. That's what Facebook and just social media in general, that's what it's all about. But not just sharing information, share the right information, the truth information and the right information, and information that comes from educated people, not just people that you're just reading or following. So I will just say that. And we got 2 more minutes, so open it up. But if not, before I say that, the next Tease Me Community Conversation would be Friday, July 9th. So, I want to give a shout out again to AARP. It's interesting, when we started the conversation with them, it's kind of like AARP is more like for older people, right? But, what we've learned is it doesn't just affect the older generation, it affects all of us. And so, really being able to learn more about AARP. And Dr. Kane, I know, you're affiliated with them, and we continue to learn more, and working with Mandla, he's been great, just being able to get the information. So tune in Friday, July 19th. To our panelists, thank you guys so much for taking your Friday night. I know we got Zara's birthday tomorrow. So 1 year old, whoop, whoop. We'll be celebrating.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get a fever win too, so we can both
Definitely.
celebrate together.
Yeah. Cool. Well, great job. Thank you again, everybody. Anything you guys want to promote? Anything that you're doing? Any events?
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Just, hey, tomorrow, Arsenal Tech High School from 9 to 3. We're going to be open for vaccinations. Come out and join us now, please. Okay. Love to see you. One of our largest public health high schools in the Marion County region. Great place, good parking, and will we take good care of you? And hey, come over and say hello to me because I'll be there.
There you
Dr.
go.
Kane, you don't want to miss out. Kristen, you have anything you want to say? Anything to share?
I don't necessarily. I just appreciate the opportunity, and I'm so thankful that you guys invited me on this evening. So thank you.
Thank you. I do have something. We have Juneteenth. It's coming up. Next weekend? So we are doing a basketball clinic, a free basketball clinic through Catch the Stars, so our foundation. And then we also have a creative writing camp for our youth that will be coming up. I think it's the end of this month into July. So you can go to catchthestars.org, check it out. Got a lot of cool stuff going on.
I love always catching the stars. Now, you know I'm a fan of catching the stars. Okay.
You want some poetry, open mic? I'll be at the block on Market Street. Word on the Block, owned by Mr. T.A. Anthony. And so we're just trying to bring back those good vibes. If you can sing, you got a poem you want to get off your chest, come see us. I'll be hosting. Yours truly.